My name is Samantha, and for years I thought being a successful senior marketing analyst with a decent salary meant I had my life figured out, that I was in control. The moment I found out what they really thought of me, my world didn't just tilt on its axis, it shattered. They called me their safety net, their responsible one, but I discovered they saw me as their golden goose, one they believed would lay golden eggs indefinitely, all while they plotted to pluck me bare and discard the carcass. Little did they know this goose had been listening, learning, and was about to unleash a truth so potent it would incinerate the carefully constructed fantasy they'd built their lives upon. For too long I had navigated the murky waters of my family dynamics, guided by a desperate need for a crumb of affection, a whisper of approval. It's a vulnerable thing to admit how deeply I craved their validation, how I poured my energy, my time, and a staggering portion of my hard-earned income into what I now see as a bottomless pit of familial obligation. I was in essence funding the erosion of my own spirit brick by painstaking brick. But the truth, as I was forced to discover, isn't a single shining beacon. It's a messy, tangled web of half-lies, convenient omissions, and outright deceptions. And I was about to unravel every single sticky thread, revealing multiple truths that would leave them reeling. If you've ever felt like the unacknowledged pillar of your family, the one whose sacrifices are expected rather than appreciated, or if you've ever been systematically taken for granted by those who should have cherished you most, then comment and subscribe. You are not alone. Trust me, if you're someone who's ever felt like the family ATM, the perpetual caregiver, or the sensible one by default, while others chased fantasies, this story will change how you see family obligation and your own unbreakable strength forever. I was born the younger child, 9 years junior to my sister Lily. That age gap in our family felt more like a chasm. Lily was the sun around which our mother particularly orbited. I was Samantha, the quiet one, the studious one, the one who learned early on to be self-sufficient because the spotlight rarely, if ever, swung my way. My father, a kind, gentle man, was the family's quiet anchor, the one who occasionally tried to balance the scales, offering me a knowing wink or a quiet word of encouragement. His passing when I was 19 and just starting college wasn't just a devastating loss. It was the event that unmoored our family ship and set it adrift in even more treacherous emotional waters. The buffer was gone. Childhood memories are a tapestry woven with threads of joy and pain, but mine, when I truly examine them, are heavily skewed towards observing Lily's triumphs and my mother's doting reactions. Lily was praised for her charm, her social graces, her ability to flit into a room and capture everyone's attention. She was, as mother often sighed, dramatically born for the spotlight. I, on the other hand, was the smart one, a label delivered with a hint of, well, at least she has that. My academic achievements were met with a cursory, "That's nice, dear," before the conversation inevitably veered back to Lily's latest social conquest or minor artistic endeavor. I remember one year, Lily, then a teenager, landed a non-speaking role as a tree in a local community theater production. The fanfare was astonishing. Flowers, a celebratory dinner, endless phone calls to relatives recounting her stage debut. That same year, I won the district-wide science fair, a project I'd poured months into. My mother's response, "Oh, that's good, Samantha. Don't get your hopes too high for nationals, though. Those things are very competitive. No dinner, no flowers, just a pragmatic, almost dismissive caution." Birthdays were another stark illustration. Lily's were always events. Themed parties, heaps of presents, gushing relatives. Mine were often a quiet family dinner, sometimes a shared cake, if it coincided with something else. One year, my 10th birthday was postponed because Lily had a very important audition for a local talent show she ultimately didn't even get into. The makeup celebration was a slice of leftover cake a week later. Favoritism wasn't just in celebration. It was in discipline, too. If Lily bent the rules or made a mistake, Mother would rush to her defense, smoothing things over, often blaming external factors. "Lily's just sensitive," or "she didn't mean it." She's just high-strung. If I so much as colored outside the lines, metaphorically speaking, I was met with stern lectures about responsibility and setting an example, though, for whom I was never sure. Financially, even as a teenager, the expectations began to diverge. Lily always needed things: new clothes for a party, money for a trip with friends. I learned to save my babysitting money meticulously because asking felt like an imposition, an interruption to the Lily show. Mother would often say with a sigh that implied it was a compliment, "Samantha's so good with money, so responsible." It wasn't a choice. It was a necessity. She'd also make comments like, "Lily just needs to find a good, successful man to take care of her," while for me it was, "Samantha, you need to get a good education and a solid career. You'll need to be able to stand on your own 2 feet," and help out, of course. The unspoken and later spoken expectation was always there. My mother, I came to understand later, had her own unfulfilled dreams. Perhaps she saw in Lily the life she wished she'd had, glamorous, adored. Or maybe her own upbringing had left her with a sense of entitlement, a belief that life owed her comfort and ease. After my father died, she seemed to shrink. Her part-time job as a receptionist, which she'd held for years, suddenly became too much. The stress. "Samantha, the memories of your father. I just can't." She'd weep. And I, barely an adult grieving myself, stepped into the role of provider almost seamlessly. It was expected. Lily by then was in her late 20s. She'd had a string of boyfriends and short-lived jobs, always full of grand pronouncements about her next big break that never quite materialized. She eventually married David, a man who seemed amiable enough but equally lacking in ambition. They moved to a different city, and for a while, contact was sporadic. Lily would call usually when she needed something or had some drama to recount her voice, often carrying that subtle condescension, the air of one who had escaped the mundane reality of caring for an aging parent. Little did I know she was merely biding her time, waiting for what she perceived as a more opportune moment to re-enter the family stage. David, Lily's husband, was a chameleon adept at mirroring Lily's moods and ambitions. If Lily was charming, David was her affable sidekick. If Lily was aggrieved, David was her staunch defender. He'd quit a series of unremarkable jobs himself, always with a grand excuse: a bad boss, a toxic environment, a better opportunity that never panned out. Together, they presented a united front of optimistic underachievement. My early potential, my knack for problem-solving, my quiet diligence in school, these were traits my father had noticed and nurtured in his own understated way. He'd help me with complex math problems, his eyes twinkling when I grasped a difficult concept. He'd praise my organized approach to projects. "You've got a good head on your shoulders, Sammy," he'd say. "Don't let anyone tell you different." After he was gone, those qualities became tools for survival, then tools for success in my career. But at home, they were merely the expected attributes of the family workhorse. The emotional foundation he'd tried to lay for me, one of self-worth independent of others' approval, was constantly being chipped away by the relentless tide of maternal expectation and sisterly indifference. My yearning for genuine love and acceptance, for a sense of belonging that wasn't tied to my utility, became a dull ache, a constant companion on my journey into adulthood. The years following Dad's death solidified the pattern. I finished college, my grief a heavy cloak I wore alongside my cap and gown. Mother attended my graduation, of course, but her main topic of conversation was a recent spat Lily was having with a neighbor. My first job, my first apartment, which Mother soon moved into, just temporarily, she'd said 5 years ago, my first real promotion. Each milestone was a stepping stone, not just for me, but for Mother's increasing reliance and demands. It was a slow, insidious creep. When I got my first significant raise, I remember feeling a surge of pride, a sense of accomplishment. I'd treated myself to a slightly better brand of coffee and thought about saving for a down payment on a small car. That same week, Mother casually mentioned that her favorite department store was having a sale, and she desperately needed a new winter coat, the expensive cashmere one, naturally. Then there was the urgent dental work she required, which my insurance didn't fully cover. The requests were always framed as needs emergencies or things Dad would have wanted her to have. My own dreams, my own financial goals were constantly deferred. The cycle of disappointment became a grimly familiar rhythm. I'd try tentatively to set a boundary. Mom money's a bit tight this month. I'd begin only to be met with a sigh, a trembling lip, and perhaps a strategically placed hand on her chest. "Oh, Samantha, don't you worry your little head about me. I'll just make do. It's just with my nerves and my blood pressure." Dr. Evans said I mustn't get stressed. The unspoken accusation hung heavy in the air. My fiscal responsibility was directly tied to her precarious health. Any attempt to discuss our financial situation inevitably ended with me feeling like a heartless, ungrateful daughter. One evening, after meticulously calculating my budget, I tried again. "Mom," I started as gently as I could, "we need to talk about expenses. My salary is decent, but it's not infinite. We're spending more than I'm comfortable with each month." She was watching her favorite soap opera, her face a mask of mild irritation at being interrupted. She muted the TV, turned to me slowly, her expression morphing into one of wounded fragility. "Samantha, darling, you know I can't manage these things. My mind, it just doesn't work that way. Not since your father." Her eyes welled up. "You're so clever with numbers, so capable. I always tell my friends, my Samantha, she takes such good care of me. I don't know what I'd do without you. Are you saying you don't want to take care of me anymore?" The guilt was a physical weight. "No, Mom, of course not. I just think we need to be a bit more careful, maybe cut back on some non-essentials." "Non-essentials." Her voice rose slightly. "Are my prescription copays non-essential? Is the organic food Dr. Evans recommended for my digestion non-essential? Is a little bit of comfort in my old age too much to ask?" It was hopeless. Every conversation ended this way, me, the unfeeling bean counter, her, the suffering matriarch. My career achievements, which I worked incredibly hard for, were met with the same lukewarm enthusiasm, always overshadowed by Mother's needs or some drama involving Lily. When I was promoted to senior analyst, a role I'd coveted, I called Mom, excited to share the news. Her response, "Oh, that's wonderful, dear. That's really something. Listen while I have you, the car insurance bill came and it's higher than I expected. Could you sort that out? And Lily called earlier, she's having such a time with her landlord, poor thing." My promotion, my success was just a brief pause before the regularly scheduled programming of demands and deflections resumed. Lily, in her sporadic calls, would often paint a picture of her own hardships, how she and David were working from dawn until dusk, just to make ends meet. There was always an air of subtle martyrdom in her voice, as if her struggles were somehow more profound, more deserving of sympathy than my quiet, consistent shouldering of responsibility. If she ever landed a temp job that lasted more than a few weeks, Mother would exclaim, "Oh, Lily is working so incredibly hard, that girl. It's just not fair how tough things are for her." My own 50-hour work weeks, the stress of managing projects and deadlines, plus running a household and financially supporting another adult, went unremarked, simply accepted as my lot. My internal monologue during these years was a relentless churn of frustration, resentment, and a creeping self-doubt. Am I being unreasonable? Is this just what daughters do? Am I selfish for wanting something for myself? Why doesn't she see me, truly see me? The psychological impact was profound. I became more withdrawn, pouring myself into work, the one place where my contributions were recognized and rewarded. I did have one anchor, my work friend, Sarah. She was sharp-witty and had a no-nonsense approach to life. She listened patiently to my occasional carefully worded laments about my home life. "Sam," she said one day over lunch after I'd recounted a particularly frustrating exchange with my mother, "you know this isn't normal, right? She's an adult. You're her daughter, not her indentured servant. And your sister sounds like a piece of work conveniently distant until she needs something." Sarah's pragmatism was a breath of fresh air, but the tendrils of guilt and obligation were wrapped so tightly around me, it felt impossible to break free. The most recent major disappointment, the one that perhaps sowed the first real seeds of my eventual rebellion, happened about 6 months before Lily and David reappeared. After years of gentle prodding, I'd finally convinced Mother to try a part-time job. I found her a position at a local library, a quiet, low-stress environment, just a few hours a day. She lasted a week. "Oh, Samantha," she sighed, collapsing onto the sofa dramatically when I came home from work that Friday. "I just can't. The fluorescent lights gave me a headache, and Mrs. Peterson in historical fiction was so brusque. It was terribly stressful, darling. My heart was fluttering all day. You understand, don't you? Some people just aren't cut out for that kind of pressure." I understood, all right. I understood that I was once again completely on my own in this. The hope that she might contribute even a little to her own upkeep withered and died. The pattern was not just established, it was set in concrete. Or so I thought, because what I didn't know was that this was just the beginning of a new, far more insidious chapter. The first wave of escalation hit like an unexpected summer storm. Lily called, her voice dripping with uncharacteristic sweetness. "Sammy, we were thinking of coming for a visit. We miss Mom so much, and you too, of course." A week later, she and David were on our doorstep, suitcases in hand, announcing they were staying for a little while to help Mom out. My tiny 2-bedroom apartment, already feeling cramped with just me and Mother, suddenly felt like a sardine can. Their help consisted mostly of them lounging on my sofa, David commandeering my small desk in the living room for his job search, which seemed to involve a lot of online gaming, and Lily supervising Mother, which meant they'd spend hours in hushed conversation, often glancing my way with expressions I couldn't quite decipher. The apartment, my sanctuary, began to feel alien. They'd rearrange things without asking use my laptop comment on my groceries. "Oh, Samantha, you buy this brand of coffee. Lily prefers the organic French roast," Mother would say, as if it were my failing. The second wave crashed shortly after. Lily and David, having quit their jobs back in their city with a vague explanation of needing a fresh start and wanting to be closer to family, made themselves entirely at home. David started using my home office space more permanently, his scattered papers and coffee mugs a constant source of irritation. Lily decided the living room curtains were drab and began talking about replacing them with something more cheerful, using a tone that implied I should pay for it. They ate my food, used my utilities, and contributed nothing but criticism and an ever-present sense of entitlement. Then came the third wave. The financial pressure intensified, but now with a new dimension. Mother, emboldened by her allies, started asking for more money for extras outings for her and Lily new clothes, because Lily had arrived with practically nothing. Poor dear, and even money for David's networking lunches. Lily would casually mention expensive items they needed, or how much nicer things would be if they just had a little more breathing room financially. The implication was clear: my decent salary was now expected to support 3 additional non-contributing adults. The fourth wave was more insidious, a campaign of subtle undermining. I'd walk into a room and conversations would abruptly stop. Lily and Mother would exchange knowing looks. I overheard snippets, Lily telling Mother I was a bit uptight and not very understanding of what they were going through. David would make comments at dinner like, "Samantha, you work so hard. You should be grateful to have family here to look after things at home," as if their mere presence was a valuable service. I was being painted as the difficult, ungrateful one in my own home, the one I paid for single-handedly. My stress levels skyrocketed. Sleep became a luxury, my concentration at work suffered, and the dull ache of resentment began to sharpen into a simmering anger. My mother's behavior, I suspected, stemmed from a deep-seated fear of being alone and a lifetime of never having to be truly self-reliant. My father had always handled the finances, the major decisions. After he died, I simply stepped into that role. She had probably been a pampered child and then a wife who was catered to. This new alliance with Lily offered her a return to that state with 2 people seemingly dedicated to her comfort, all funded by me. The inheritance fantasy was the cherry on top. My father, a meticulous man, had always saved diligently, but his final illness had been long and expensive. The insurance covered much, but not all. After his death, What little remained of his savings was managed by me transparently to cover Mother's living expenses beyond what my initial salary could stretch to. Over a couple of years, combined with Mother's own inability to curb her spending on non-essentials, a habit she'd had even when Dad was alive, that small nest egg had dwindled to almost nothing. I had the bank statements, the records of every withdrawal, every bill paid. I had explained this to Mother multiple times, but it was a truth she seemed incapable or unwilling to absorb. She preferred the narrative that she was a woman of some means temporarily inconvenienced. The turning point, the discovery that lit the fuse, came one afternoon when I came home early from work feeling unwell. They thought I was still out. As I lay on my bed, the door slightly ajar, I heard them in the living room, their voices clear and distinct. "It won't be long now," Lily said, her voice smug. "Mom's almost convinced. Once Samantha's out, we can finally breathe. That inheritance Dad left has to be a decent amount, enough to get us that little cottage by the lake Mom always wanted, and a bit left over for me and David to get back on our feet properly." "She's been so stingy with it," David chimed in, "living it up in this nice apartment all on Mom's money while we were struggling." "Mom deserves to enjoy her money," Lily agreed. "We'll take such good care of her, much better than Samantha ever did with her long face and her penny pinching. We can sell all this old junk of Samantha's, too. Get some proper furniture." My blood ran cold, then hot. Mom's money, my old junk, the sheer audacity, the blatant greed, the utter dismissal of everything I had done, everything I had sacrificed. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. This wasn't just about them needing a place to stay. It was a calculated takeover fueled by a delusion. My internal transformation began in that instant. The years of hurt, of quiet resentment coalesced into a cold, hard resolve. The golden goose wasn't just going to fly the coop. She was going to make sure they understood unequivocally that the golden eggs had always been hers. My friend Sarah, whom I'd updated about Lily and David's extended visit, had been increasingly concerned. "They're parasites, Sam," she'd said bluntly. Now I knew she was right. They were my enemies cloaked in the guise of family. The stakes were no longer just about my money or my space. They were about my sanity, my self-respect, my entire future. They were actively, callously plotting to dispossess me. A few days later, after another tense dinner where I was treated more like an inconvenient tenant than the person footing all the bills, Mother approached me, Lily and David flanking her like eager vultures. Her expression was a practiced mask of sorrowful resolve. "Samantha," she began, her voice falsely gentle, oozing a syrupy concern that made my skin crawl. "Lily, David, and I have been talking, and well, darling, this is very difficult for me to say." I steeled myself, my heart pounding, but my face, I hoped, remained impassive. I knew with chilling certainty what was coming, but what I didn't know was that this was just the beginning of their grand pronouncement, the one they believed would seal my fate and secure their fictional fortune. Mother took a deep theatrical breath, clutching Lily's hand. "Samantha, dear," she continued, her voice laden with faux regret. I've reached my limit living with you. It's just not working anymore. Your ways are a bit difficult for me in my old age. I've decided to end this life with you. I'm going to live with Lily and David. They understand my needs." This was it. The moment they'd been building towards. Lily squeezed Mother's hand, a small, triumphant smile playing on her lips. David puffed out his chest slightly, looking magnanimous. Then Lily stepped forward, her voice no longer sweet, but sharp and decisive. "So Samantha, as Mom said, she'll be staying with us. We'll find a nice new place, just the three of us. It's for the best." David chimed in, his tone condescending. "Yeah, we don't need you anymore cramping Mom's style. You've done your bit, I guess. So you can just leave. The sooner the better, really. We need to make arrangements." Just leave. The words hung in the air, brutal in their simplicity. Years of sacrifice, of putting their needs before my own, of quietly ensuring Mother had a comfortable life, all culminating in this dismissive, callous ejection. They weren't just asking me to leave. They were erasing me from the equation, already envisioning their idyllic future, funded by a phantom inheritance. A strange calm descended over me. The initial shockwave of their words receded, replaced by an icy clarity. The overheard conversation, their escalating entitlement, their smug, expectant faces, it all coalesced into a single, undeniable truth. They were driven by pure, unadulterated greed and a breathtaking level of self-delusion. They truly believed there was a pot of gold waiting for them, and I was merely the inconvenient dragon guarding it, a dragon they thought they could easily shoo away. My heart didn't just break. It shattered into 1,000 pieces from the sheer unmitigated betrayal. But then, as I looked at their eager, predatory faces, something new forged itself from those shards, pure, unadulterated steel. The years of swallowing my pain, of biting my tongue, of making myself smaller to accommodate their egos. It was all over. "Okay," I said, my voice surprisingly even. The three of them exchanged surprised glances. They had clearly expected tears, arguments, begging. My simple acquiescence threw them off script. Lily recovered first. "Okay. Well, good. That makes things easier. We were thinking you could be out by the end of the month." "Actually," I replied, a slow, deliberate smile forming on my lips, "I can be out much sooner. How about next Saturday?" Their surprise morphed into visible relief, quickly followed by ill-concealed delight. "Oh, well, that's wonderful, Samantha," Mother gushed suddenly, beaming. "So sensible of you." Lily and David shared a look that screamed jackpot. They thought they were winning. Oh, I mused internally, watching them practically vibrate with anticipation. They thought I'd crumble, pack my little bags, and slink away defeated, leaving them to their spoils. They underestimated me. They always had. But this time their underestimation would be their spectacular undoing. The golden goose was indeed about to fly the coop, but she was taking every last one of her golden eggs and the entire damn nest with her. The decision wasn't just to move out, it was to execute a meticulously planned exit that would strip away every illusion they held, every comfort they had taken for granted, every assumption they had made about me and my resources. The decision was to serve them a truth bomb of epic proportions. The following week was a masterpiece of covert operations. I took a few personal days off work, telling them I needed time to find a new place and pack my personal belongings. They barely registered my absence, too busy poring over brochures for lakeside cottages and discussing how they would redecorate once I was gone. Lily even had the audacity to ask if she could have my good winter coat and my barely used Italian leather handbag. "You probably won't need them wherever you're going, and they're my style," she chirped. I smiled sweetly and said, "We'll see Lily." My packing involved far more than clothes and books. I quietly contacted a reputable moving company, booking them for Saturday morning. I gathered every receipt I could find for the sofa, the dining table, the beds, the television, the refrigerator, the washing machine, the microwave, even the drab curtains Lily despised. Every significant item in that apartment had been purchased by me with my money after Mother had moved in. I photocopied the lease agreement, clearly showing my name as the sole lessee. I compiled bank statements from the past 5 years, highlighting rent payments, utility payments, and the dwindling, then extinguished funds from my father's estate, followed by the clear pattern of my salary covering everything. I organized it all into a neat, damning folder. I also found a small new apartment for myself, a bright, airy one-bedroom in a different part of town, far away from the suffocating atmosphere of my current home. I signed the lease and paid the deposit, a thrill of liberation coursing through me. My friend Sarah was my confidant and co-conspirator in spirit. "Are you sure you're okay, Sam?" she asked, her voice laced with concern, when I told her the outline of my plan. "Sarah," I said, a grim satisfaction in my voice, "I've never been more okay. They want me gone. They're about to get their wish, just not in the way they imagined." She chuckled. "Go get 'em, girl. Let me know if you need backup. Or bail money." The days leading up to moving day were filled with a strange, almost surreal calm on my part. I was polite, agreeable, even helpful when Mother asked me to reach something on a high shelf. This lulled them into an even deeper, false sense of security. They saw me boxing up my clothes, my books, a few sentimental knickknacks. They saw what they wanted to see: a defeated daughter making way for their glorious new era. Lily and David were already measuring spaces, Lily chattering excitedly about new furniture they'd buy with Mom's money. And David was making calls, presumably to real estate agents in idyllic but expensive locations. Little did they know I had been documenting everything. I thought, as I sealed another box of my personal items, my gaze sweeping over my furniture, my appliances, my home that they so arrogantly believed was theirs for the taking. The truth would soon come to light in the most unexpected and, for them, most devastating way. The anticipation was a tight coil in my chest, not of fear, but of impending righteous vindication. Saturday couldn't come soon enough. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, a perfect day for a new beginning. And a spectacular ending. I was up early, a strange sense of calm purpose filling me. Mother Lily and David were still in their pajamas drinking coffee. My coffee from my coffee maker in the living room, looking for all the world like they owned the place. They were discussing whether they should get a new widescreen TV immediately or wait until they'd settled into the cottage. At precisely 9:00 a.m., the doorbell rang. "That'll be my movers," I announced cheerfully, heading for the door. Lily raised an eyebrow. "Movers, plural. For a few boxes of clothes and books. Samantha, isn't that a bit extravagant?" "Oh, I have a bit more than just clothes and books," I said, opening the door to 3 burly movers. "Good morning, gentlemen. Come on in. We can start with the large items in the living room." The head mover, a no-nonsense man named Frank, nodded and his team got to work. They headed straight for the large, comfortable sofa. My sofa purchased 2 years ago with my bonus. "Hey!" Lily exclaimed, jumping up. "What are they doing with Mom's sofa?" I turned to her, my expression mild. "Actually, Lily, it's my sofa. Purchased by me. I have the receipt right here if you'd like to see it." I patted the folder I was carrying. Her jaw dropped slightly. Mother looked confused. "But Samantha, dear, that sofa has always been here." "No, Mom," I corrected gently. "The old sofa that came with you was Dad's and it was falling apart. I replaced it. With my money." The movers, unfazed, expertly began to maneuver the sofa towards the door. David, who had been watching with a frown, suddenly spluttered, "Now hold on a minute. You can't just take all the furniture. Why not David?" I asked, my voice still light. "It's mine." Next, they moved towards the entertainment unit and the large flat-screen TV. "Not the TV!" Mother cried, genuinely distressed now. "That's where I watch my programs. My TV, Mom. Bought and paid for by me." As the movers began to efficiently clear the living room, the coffee table, the bookshelves, the rug, the expressions on the faces of Mother Lily and David shifted from confusion to dawning horror. My friend Sarah arrived then, as planned, ostensibly to help me with my last few bits. She gave me a subtle thumbs up and then leaned against the doorframe, an interested spectator. The kitchen was next. The movers started on the refrigerator. "You absolutely cannot take the fridge," David almost shouted, his face reddening. "That stays with the apartment, it's standard." "Actually, David," I replied, pulling out another document from my folder. "This apartment came bare. I bought this refrigerator, and the stove, and the microwave, and the dishwasher. All mine." I handed him a copy of the appliance store receipt. He stared at it, speechless. Lily, her voice trembling with a mixture of rage and panic, finally found her voice. "What is the meaning of this, Samantha? Are you insane? You're stripping the place bare." "I'm merely taking my possessions, Lily," I said calmly. "The things I paid for. You said I should leave. So I am. I'm just taking my belongings with me." And the power dynamic had not just shifted. It had inverted completely. I was in control, calm and collected, armed with facts and receipts. They were frantic, their arrogant certainty crumbling before their eyes. Mother sank onto one of the dining chairs, which was also slated to go, her face pale. But where will we sit? What will we eat with that, Mother?" I said. My voice, losing some of its lightness and gaining a steely edge, is something you, Lily, and David will need to figure out. The ultimate truth bomb was yet to come. As the apartment grew increasingly bare, resembling a hollow shell, Lily finally shrieked the question that had clearly been burning in her mind. "But the inheritance, Dad's money. You can't take that. Mom needs that to live on. We need that." I let her outburst hang in the air for a moment, the movers pausing in their work, sensing the crescendo of the drama. Sarah watched, a grimly satisfied look on her face. I opened my folder one last time and took out the compiled bank statements and a copy of the lease agreement. "Let's talk about Dad's money, Lily," I said, my voice now devoid of any warmth. "There is no significant inheritance. There hasn't been for years." "You're lying!" Lily screamed, her face contorted. "Mom, she's lying. Dad was always so careful." "Dad was careful, Lily," I affirmed. "But his final illness was very costly. Insurance covered a lot, but not everything. After he passed, there was a modest sum left. I managed it for Mother." I held up the statements. "These show every penny. It covered her expenses along with what I could contribute from my early jobs for about 2 years. It also shows Mother's rather consistent spending habits on things that were not exactly necessities. That money ran out completely over 3 years ago. Since then, Mom, I have been supporting you entirely. This apartment, the rent, the utilities, the food, your clothes, your medical co-pays, everything. It has all come from my salary, from my hard work." Mother stared at me, her mouth agape. No, that can't be true. You always said there was something." "I said I was managing it, Mom. And I did until it was gone. I tried to explain it to you multiple times, but you never wanted to hear it. You preferred to believe you were a woman of independent means." Then I held up the lease. And speaking of this apartment, the lease is in my name. Solely in my name. I've already given my 30-day notice to the landlord. That notice period is up at the end of next week. So, you, Lily, and David will need to vacate the premises by then. Or I suppose you could try to sign a new lease if you can prove you have the income to cover the rent. The shock in the room was palpable. David looked like he'd been punched in the gut. Lily's face was a mask of disbelief and fury. Mother simply began to weep quiet, helpless sobs. "So, you see," I continued, my voice clear and strong, "there's no inheritance for you to build your lakeside cottage with Lily. There's no Mom's money for you and David to get back on your feet with. There's just the reality that you quit your jobs and moved in here expecting a free ride and a phantom fortune, all while trying to kick out the one person who was actually keeping a roof over your mother's head. Karma." I thought watching their world implode didn't just come for them, it brought an entire moving company and a stack of irrefutable evidence. The movers were now taking the bed from my old room, then Mother's bed, also mine. The apartment was cavernous, echoing. Lily turned on David. "You idiot! You said you researched this. You said she had to have money. How was I supposed to know she was a lying, scheming witch?" David snarled back, glaring at me. Mother just kept crying, "My things, my home, how could you? Samantha, how could you do this to your own mother?" I picked up my last box, the one with my laptop and personal documents. Sarah stepped forward and took it from me with a supportive smile. "You wanted me to leave Mother," I said, my voice devoid of malice but firm with conviction. "So I am. You, Lily, and David said you didn't need me anymore. You're about to find out if that's true. This is the consequence of your choices, of your greed, and of how you've treated me for years. I wish you all the best of luck." I walked out of the rapidly emptying apartment, Sarah by my side, without a backward glance. The sounds of their dismay, their accusations, and Mother's wails faded behind me. Justice wasn't just served. It was a meticulously planned, flawlessly executed 5-course meal of reality, and they were about to digest every single bite. The door to my old apartment closed behind me with a decisive click, a sound that resonated with finality. Sarah gave my arm a squeeze. "You okay?" she whispered. I nodded, a strange mixture of relief, profound sadness, and a fierce, liberating strength coursing through me. "More than okay." I managed a watery smile on my face. The immediate aftermath for the trio I left behind was from what I pieced together later pure chaos. The movers, professional to the end, completed their job, leaving Mother Lily and David standing in a virtually empty apartment with nothing but their suitcases, a few kitchen basics I deemed too old to take, and the crushing weight of their shattered illusions. Panic, I was told by a sympathetic neighbor who'd witnessed some of the later commotions, set in quickly. Accusations flew thick and fast. Lily blamed David for his faulty research into my father's non-existent fortune. David blamed Lily for her greed and for convincing him to quit his job. Both of them, at intervals, turned on Mother, demanding to know how she could have let the money disappear, or why she hadn't secured her assets from me. Mother, in turn, dissolved into helpless tears and recriminations, wailing about my cruelty and her sudden homelessness. My phone started blowing up almost immediately. Voicemails from Mother choked with sobs. "Samantha, how could you abandon me? I'm your mother. I have nowhere to go. You've left me with nothing. This is all your fault." Texts followed a barrage of guilt trips and demands that I fix this. Lily also tried calling her messages a furious tirade of abuse threats and accusations. "You conniving bitch, you planned this, you'll pay for this. You think you're so clever, but you'll regret this." David surprisingly remained silent, perhaps too stunned or too busy arguing with Lily. I didn't answer. I had already changed my primary contact number. They were reaching an old SIM I'd kept for this transition. After listening to a couple of voicemails to understand the initial fallout, I simply turned that phone off. My boundary was set. I had said my piece, enacted my plan. There was nothing more to discuss. Their attempts at damage control were frantic and futile. Lily, I later heard, tried calling the landlord, presumably to plead their case or accuse me of something. The landlord, a pragmatic businessman who had always dealt solely with me and appreciated my reliability as a tenant, simply reiterated the terms of my lease and the impending eviction date. He had no obligation to them. Mother, in a desperate move, even tried contacting some distant relatives, painting herself as the destitute, abandoned matriarch. However, most of our extended family had always kept a polite distance, vaguely aware of Mother's entitled nature and Lily's penchant for drama. No white knight rode to their rescue. Sarah was my rock during those first few days in my new, blessedly peaceful apartment. She helped me unpack, brought over pizza and wine, and listened without judgment as I processed the emotional whirlwind. There was triumph. Yes, a deep, satisfying sense of justice served. But there was also a profound grief for the family I wished I'd had, for the love and acceptance I had craved for so long and now knew would never come from them, not authentically. "You did what you had to do, Sam," Sarah said firmly, "for your own survival. Don't let them make you feel guilty for choosing yourself. They made their bed, now they have to lie in it, or rather, on the floor since you took the beds." We shared a dark laugh at that. The short-term changes in our family dynamic were stark, a total severing of ties. The eviction notice for the old apartment would be formally served if they weren't out by the end of the following week. They were facing homelessness, unemployment, and the harsh reality that their get-rich-quick scheme had spectacularly backfired. They had to scramble to face the consequences of relying on fantasy instead of fact. My emotional processing of the victory was complex. There was the lightness of freedom, the quiet joy of waking up in my own space, a space filled only with my things, my energy, my choices. The first night I slept more soundly than I had in years. The constant tension that had been my companion for so long began to dissipate. Yet there were moments of sadness, flashes of old memories, my father's kind smile, a rare shared laugh with my mother from long ago. But these were quickly overshadowed by the fresh, stinging memory of their betrayal. In the end, the truth didn't just set me free, it rebuilt me stronger. I wrote in my journal, and I knew it was true. The old Samantha, the one who yearned for their approval above all else, was gone. A new Samantha, one who valued her own peace and self-respect, was emerging. The path ahead was mine to forge on my own terms. And for the first time in a very long time, that felt incredibly, exhilaratingly good. 2 years passed. 2 years of quiet rebuilding, of conscious choices, of embracing the peace I had fought so hard to secure. My life had transformed in ways I hadn't even dared to dream of, back when I was drowning in familial obligation. My new apartment, though smaller than the one I'd shared with Mother, felt infinitely larger, filled with light plants and books that reflected my taste. Professionally, I thrived. Freed from the constant stress and financial drain, my focus sharpened. I received a significant promotion at work, heading a new department, and even started a small online consultancy on the side, a passion project that was surprisingly successful. I traveled something I'd always longed to do, a solo trip to Italy, a hiking adventure with Sarah. The karma that visited my antagonists was by all accounts thorough and unflinching. My mother, after a short, miserable stint couch surfing with a reluctant, distant cousin, had been forced to confront reality in the harshest way. With no savings and no one willing to support her entitled lifestyle, she had to get a job. She ended up working part-time as a cashier at a discount grocery store. The work was demanding, the pay was minimum wage, and for the first time in her adult life, she experienced the exhaustion of standing on her feet for hours dealing with impatient customers. She lived in a small, subsidized studio apartment in a less desirable part of town. The experience seemed to have humbled her somewhat. About a year after the incident, as I privately termed it, she managed to get my new phone number through a persistent, well-meaning aunt. She called, her voice hesitant, devoid of its usual demanding tone. She didn't ask for money. She asked how I was. Our conversations, infrequent and brief, were a world away from the guilt-laden monologues of the past. She never apologized directly, but there was a new, tentative respect in her voice, an acknowledgement of my independence. I kept my boundaries firm, no financial support conversations, strictly on my terms. It wasn't the warm, loving mother-daughter relationship I'd once craved, but it was tolerable, an acceptance of a new, starker reality. Lily and David's story was less about humbling and more about a rapid, messy implosion. Their dream of a lakeside cottage and easy living evaporated into a nightmare of recriminations. Faced with eviction and no income, the strain on their relationship became unbearable. David, I heard, through the grapevine, blamed Lily incessantly for the stupid plan and for ruining his life. Lily, equally incensed, accused him of being useless and lazy. They scrambled for jobs, any jobs. Lily ended up as a night shift cleaner in an office building, a far cry from her imagined life of leisure. David found sporadic work as a day laborer. Their cramped, run-down apartment became a battleground. What goes around doesn't just come around, it multiplies, I mused. Not with malice, but with a detached sense of inevitability. Their greed and deceit had sown bitter seeds, and they were now reaping a harvest of misery. Eventually, about 18 months after I moved out, David left Lily. He reportedly moved back to his hometown, telling anyone who would listen that Lily was a delusional gold digger. Lily was left alone, struggling to make ends meet, her charm having finally met its match in the form of cold, hard reality. I had no contact with either of them, nor did I desire any. My family dynamics were, needless to say, completely rewritten. The old hierarchy with Mother at the top, supported by me and Lily as the favored child, was obliterated. Now there was me, independent and thriving. Mother learning self-sufficiency in her twilight years, and Lily isolated and facing the consequences of her choices. My support system had also transformed. Sarah remained my closest friend, my chosen sister. I'd also cultivated new friendships with people who valued me for who I was, not for what I could provide. I even started dating again cautiously at first, but eventually met Michael, a kind, intelligent architect who respected my boundaries, celebrated my successes, and offered a partnership built on equality and mutual support, not dependency. Reflecting on the journey, the pain of the betrayal was still a faint scar, a reminder of what had been. But it no longer ached. I learned that family isn't solely defined by blood ties. It's forged in respect, reciprocal support, and genuine love. Sometimes the most courageous and self-loving act is to walk away from a dynamic that is systematically destroying your spirit, even if it means severing ties with people you once desperately hoped would love you back in the way you deserved. I learned that my worth was inherent, not something to be earned through endless sacrifice. The peace I now enjoyed, the quiet confidence that radiated from me, these were the true treasures earned not through a phantom inheritance, but through my own strength, resilience, and the courage to choose myself. Justice, I discovered, wasn't just about them getting their comeuppance. It was about me reclaiming my life, my joy, and my future. The deepest moral of my story, the truth that settled in my bones, is that self-preservation is not selfish. It is essential. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and for years I had been draining myself to fill the insatiable needs of others, leaving nothing for myself. I learned that true worth emanates from within, a quiet knowing that has nothing to do with external validation or the approval of those who are incapable of giving it freely. Setting boundaries isn't an act of aggression. It's an act of profound self-respect, crucial for any healthy relationship, be it with family, friends, or partners. And sometimes the most loving act you can perform for yourself, and paradoxically sometimes even for others in the long run, is to let go of toxic dynamics and choose your own well-being. Have you ever had to make a devastatingly hard choice to protect your own peace or reclaim your life? What's the biggest lesson you've learned about navigating complex family dynamics or setting boundaries with loved ones? If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt unseen, unappreciated, or exploited, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear that they are not alone and that change is possible. Comment your own experiences below. Let's create a space where we can support and uplift each other. And hit that subscribe button if you're ready to hear more stories of triumph over adversity, of finding strength in the broken places, and of building a life filled with purpose and joy. Remember, you deserve to be treated with respect, kindness, and unwavering support, especially by those who claim to be closest to you. Your well-being, your dreams, and your peace of mind matter profoundly. Choose yourself every single time. It's not just a choice. It's your birthright. Let's build a community where we champion self-worth and celebrate the courage it takes to forge your own path. I'll be sharing more stories about navigating life's myriad challenges and discovering the incredible power that lies within you. Stay tuned.